Hello! Welcome to the Forensic Science Center. We are hosting an art exhibition here in honor of Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. We have here Janie, our Latina artist, Puerto Riqueña, and she is a military veteran. So she has a lot of stories and a lot of feelings in her art and pieces through abstract work, and we can't wait to get started. So how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Sam, for having me back. This is actually, it's become one of my favorite things to do. So I'm so glad you asked me to come back this year.
Oh, that's great. It's an honor for us to have you here, especially with the stories behind your pieces.
Thank you.
So tell us about your Latino heritage. What's your story with your family?
I am Puerto Rican. Most people will say New York Rican. So I was born and raised in New York and Brooklyn, but my parents are both from Catania, Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Being Hispanic in my community was everything, you know, like especially growing up in Brooklyn, being Puerto Rican in Brooklyn was tough enough, but it was fun. It really was. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was very lucky to have the kind of parents I did, because our culture was it still is very important to them. So we get to celebrate that as a family unit. We're a pretty tight family. So they instilled a lot of good values in us.
Oh, that's so great. I love that, especially now during the pandemic. It's nice to just hold on to those great memories and things that are close from.
I did recently, I did a series called En el Tiempo de la Flore, which actually is still here at the other building. Unfortunately, due to COVID, the building was shut down during that time, but that actually was like my parents' love story. I think I talked you through that, you know,
it's
the meeting
so
of boy meets girl, relationship grows, and then as you get older, eventually one has to leave, one person goes, and one is always left behind, you know.
The goodbye.
I love their love story.
That it was beautiful. That
thank you.
Still is.
Thank you.
So, what inspired you to become an artist? When did you start, and when you realized, oh, I'd like to do this?
I think when I was like a little kid, I knew that I could always draw, but it wasn't something that, back when I grew up, you know, back in the 70s, your parents pretty much had a plan for you. You were married at 19, or you were going to college. I kind of broke both rules and went to the military instead. So whenever I had a chance, I would draw, I would sketch, you know. But it was kind of more for me. It wasn't very cool when you were a teenager back in the 70s to be, oh, like, I want to be an artist so I can draw. No, you had to be a little bit cooler than that. So I used to stuff that with sketch pad. Under the couch or under the bed, you know.
Wow.
And it wasn't really until I met my husband right after he was done with medical school. We met at the same hospital we both worked at. I'm a retired occupational therapist. He's an ER physician. And he saw me drawing one day. And he says, you draw? All this time I know you? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? So one day I came home, and I think it was for my birthday. He bought me a collapsible easel and some acrylic paints and a couple of canvases and some brushes, and they were just waiting there when I got home from work. And that's kind of like how I started painting.
That's beautiful.
That was back in '92, and I've been kind of doing it ever since.
Wow.
So
look at that, the catalyst that got you to where you are today. So you have a COVID series here.
I do.
Would you like to share the story behind that?
Yeah, this series is actually very special to me. When the pandemic first started, we were quarantined, my husband and I. Well, not so much him, because he was frontline, so he had to be at work all the time. But I started getting sick, and we couldn't understand why. I just wasn't getting better, and it was a fever every day. And eventually, my husband said, I think pretty much, we can establish here that you have COVID. So I spent literally, about maybe between 4, almost 6 weeks just in bed. I was so ill.
Wow. And
during that time, since we couldn't see anyone, not family or anything like that, the only one that was coming and going was my husband, Brad. And we get there's a noise in the driveway. My husband comes out, and there is my two super dear best friends, Rachel and James Thornburg. And they're this crazy little wild spirited couple that I love, you know, and they just told me to go look in the back. And as they were pulling away on their motorcycles, you know, they're putting their helmets on, and they're,
awesome.
yeah, and I'm like, because I couldn't go near them, you know, and they were like, we love you and we just want you to get better, and we left you something in the back. So when I went to the back of our deck, there was, on the back patio door, there was an entire, like a curtain, just strings, all the way across like this, and there was all these tiny little hearts that were cut out. You can see here and here, and then it was all buttons and, you know, political cartoons and hearts and colored paper and paper airplanes, and they had made basically a hanging get well card for me.
That gets me every time.
It was left with, you know, get better, we love you. And because I had breast cancer before, James's mom did as well, so they get kind of a little protective of me. They don't like seeing me sick. So I was just floored by that. And I remember just looking at it and telling my husband, oh my God, did you see this? This was great. So it was James and Rachel and their son Tenzin, and they just put it together. And it's just on strings all the way across. So a few days later, it looked like it was going to rain. Actually, it did rain. And I told Brad, can you please take it down? I don't want the papers to get all mushy. And so he did, but when he did that, he gathered everything together. So all the strings were like knotted, and I said, oh. So we made sure that I kept everything together. When I started feeling better, since he could travel outside of the house, I asked him to go to my art studio, and if he would pick up a few things for me. So the only thing he did pick up was black and red paint and white, and then he brought some canvases home with me, and, you know, some brushes and stuff. And the colors kind of came together because I had no choice here to bring any other color paints.
You did great. That's beautiful.
So, but I did not want to, I didn't want what they did to just be forgotten. So this piece actually came first. I decided to use all the buttons, all the hearts. These are all like big hearts she did here. These are parts of the paper airplane, you know, like I said, buttons, some of the strings are still attached. So a mixed media came about with this, and so did this one. So this one actually came first. I went to Noel Girls Public High School in New York, Maxwell High School, and one of my Maxwell sisters, her mom was actually one of the first people to pass away from COVID in New York. So when I did this piece is called Cuando el COVID se llevó a Doña Emilia, which translates into when COVID took, you know, Doña Emilia, and that's Millie's mom. This painting actually is going to them after it's done showing. It was showing recently in Delaware, and then I took it from there and I brought it here. So, which was nice when you said that was hopefully that was your theme for this year. This one came second, and this one basically shows a lot of what I went through, you know, just being sick all the time, and, you know, always with fever and not eating, and, you know, my husband having to go off to work, and I was home, so my mom and my dad, you know, would come and they would leave food for me, like on the doorstep of the house.
Cute.
And then they would like scurry away like two little mice, and then they'd be like, I'd stand up by the window like, come back, you know. So I decided to incorporate everything that they gave me. I love James and Rachel, you know, and this was such a way for me to say thank you to them for, you know, for having taken the time to come and do something like that, because it was so unexpected, you know. And I took that stuff and I decided to just make this big media, mixed media piece, and I really love it. Like, I really love this piece.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
think
It's the
it's
first
one of my-
mixed media that I've seen.
I know,
so
and
it's,
all the little things that you see, you know, the little cartoons and stuff in the top, and I love this piece. So
it's so
this one
sentimental.
here came last, and I decided to enter some I love yous and in graffitis on the inside of this. Underneath it, I decided not to use the rest of the paper. There was maybe a few more paper airplanes that were left over. Most of what was left, you know, is in here, except for smaller pieces of paper. But this one, I decided to go in and draw underneath it and then make translucent the red. I just wanted to basically accentuate this part here, and so people could see that this was something that was ever changing. This disease or this illness is ever changing. It has no rhyme or reason, and it doesn't matter whether you're rich or you're poor, or you're white or you're black. It's gonna hit you anyway. I think that's the biggest thing. It has no boundaries.
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't care if you're a mom or you're a priest or you're the president of the United States. It's gonna hit you anyway.
That's right.
So this tells me that from this blackness, you know, hopefully they will find a cure for this at some point. But I told these people, you know, this is for all those people like my mom and my sisters that came in and they left, you know, little things on my doorstep. And, you know, my sister would say, well, I dropped something for you, I made you cookies. Or my mom would come, you know, with some rice and some beans, which is like comfort food for me, you know, and leave it out front. You know, my dad bought me a little bottle of tequila and he said, here, I left you this, you know. I love that. You know, that's what our family does. Doesn't matter if we are fighting or if we are apart, or one is here, one is there. No matter what, whatever happens, we always come together. So this one is for all those little people, my sisters and my mom and dad, and they came and they helped.
That's beautiful. So what's the takeaway from this COVID series that you would like the audience to take home?
If you have family and with this illness, it's spreading so badly now, and it's coming up again. The numbers are going up. If you have family, you know, don't let anything get in the way. Stick together. Call your friends, call your family. Make sure that you always stay in touch. You know, Puerto Ricans tend to always want to be stoic and, you know what, I'm fine. I got this. You know, especially in my position where I'm the oldest. But it's not always like that. You know, watch your family. Sometimes they may not know that they're getting sick. So when people look at this, I want people to see that, you know, your friends, they will come. You know, your family will always be there. And even though you may not have seen someone for almost 40 years, because that's how long it's been since I saw my Maxwell sister. Although we all communicate on Facebook, it still hurts me that her mom, she lost her mom to this. And that she was one of the first wave in New York to go. You know, and I want them to know that you can share in that sadness and you can share in when people get better, but there's always someone that cares. You know, I think that's the most important thing for me. My husband goes off to work every day and he sees multiple cases of this. And at the beginning, he was so tired. He would come home and, you know, and we had a plan. He'd change here, but he did that so to make sure that I wasn't getting sicker or he wasn't going to be sick, so he could get back up and go do it the very next day again. you know, and all the other people that work with him.
That's very moving. That got me a little bit. That's nice. Wow. And it's beautiful, and it's great with all the support and family that's big in our Latino heritage. You know, family sticks together, big family. So it's nice that this all comes together, not just with COVID, but also with our culture that we hold closely. And even though the pandemic's here, we still follow our traditional values.
I tell my family, and like I tell my friend, you know, just mask up, just do what you need to do. Keep your social distance. And every little bit helps. You know, you don't have to go crazy and overboard, but every little bit helps. And let's see if we can try and bring this back to where it used to be. I miss going out. I miss, you know, hanging out and going to a restaurant and sitting on a patio and not having to put a mask on. I miss all of that. I'm sure everybody else does too.
Oh, yes.
We just want our lives
You
back.
speak for all of us. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And then we have one more piece
I do.
over here. And can you tell us about this piece, which is the vibrant colors and
this is part of a new series I'm working on called Cuando Bailan los Pajaritos. It translates into when the little birds dance. So there's actually another set showing at a gallery 22 in Delaware, which goes to this, which is a 4-series painting that is done this way. So it goes from large to small. This was done, I was sitting on my deck, and before I started the smaller pieces, and over the past summer, and I was having coffee, and there was these 2 beautiful birds, and they were just chasing one another, and it was, you know, and they were dark in color, but they had these little yellow specks, and they would just, it was almost like, are they mating, what are they doing, but they were just playing, and I kept watching them, and I'm like, wow, that's just really awesome. And they would just, but they were dancing, almost like they were dancing in midair, and I loved it. So I got up and I went to my studio, and I started playing around with the colors to get that yellow, that faint yellow speck that I saw in them. And the first set was born, and then came this one. And it reminds me a lot. I lost my brother in 2018, and he was only 50. And my mom is always saying, look, your brother's come to visit. And there's always these little birds that come to her front porch. And she'll always say, look, your brother's here to visit. And so when I saw those birds, and I saw them dancing like that, I just started, you know, I said, okay, this is it. I need to do a series like this. So it reminds me a lot of what my mom sees when she sees the little bird, and she swears that that's your brother. Look, see, there he is, hanging out on the branch. He's just come to visit.
That's beautiful.
So, and that's pretty much it for these.
Oh, well,